All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 10th work session, the Keystone Central School District Board of Directors. We'll start the meeting with the flag salute and a moment of silence. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Mrs. Donahue. Mr. Elling,
Present.
Mr. Johnston,
Here.
Mr. Coe,
Present.
Ms. Lynch,
Here.
Mr. Miller, Mr. Probert, Mrs. Smith,
present.
Mr. Strauss.
Here.
Thank you. The Board of Directors held an executive session on May 13th. Start time was 6:48 p.m. and it was until 7:52 p.m. So tonight for our presentations, our first presentation lead by Mr. Lynch on a CTC agreement with Jersey Shore School District.
Hi,
Yes.
good evening. Oh, sorry.
That's okay, Kurt. I'm glad you're there. I just also want to acknowledge that Dr. Ulmer, the superintendent from the Jersey Shore Area School District, is also in attendance via Zoom for tonight's meeting. So I'm going to ask Mr. Lynch to just give you a very brief overview of proposed articulation agreement between our two school districts. And then there'll be some time for question and answer, and Dr. Ulmer and I, as well as Mr. Lynch, can field your questions. Go ahead, Kurt.
Okay, thank you. As we look at the needs of the community, we've come up with an idea that maybe we can share some seats between Jersey Shore and Keystone Central in two programs. And this slide shows embedded in the agenda. It's a 3-year agreement that would start in 21-22, and it's allow for basically 5 seats to be swapped between districts in 2 programs. One is health occupations, which Keystone Central currently has. Under the state code, it's 510899. You'll always hear me refer to as a SIP code. And that program is developed to address healthcare industry needs. And right now our communities definitely are in need of that. And we've looked at this in the past. It's called manufacturing technology. It's a 48999. And the Jersey Shore has put together a couple programs in their engineering technologies and technicians programs and came up with, this is a unique SIP code. When you ever see the 999, it means it's been developed as a unique program. And this basically addresses the manufacturing needs in Clinton County and surrounding counties, such as robotics, electronics, hydraulics, pneumatics, has a little bit of CNC, has a little bit of drafting like we have, but it's more based into what your companies like your First Qualities, your West companies, those companies are looking for in manufacturing mechanics and the whole on the floor help that they need. And Jersey Shore is a very good program with that. This program is also tied to our apprenticeship program that Keystone Central owns. So Jersey Shore has a pre-apprenticeship program that feeds to our program in our apprenticeship. So we are tied that way in this program with our machining program. So they're all tied together. And it's something that I've done some surveys on 2 years. The last survey I did was October 2020, and we actually had 30 kids that said they would be interested to talk about this program. Now, of course, some of those students have found a seat in our programs. So we would look at recruiting some students to go to Jersey Shore to take this program in their engineering technology program structure. I did talk to 4 students already that said they had interest, and I said I would reach out to them in the summer. if we know this agreement is going to go forward. If you want to go to the next slide, the cost comparisons. To start a program like they have, a manufacturing technology program, just to get it off the ground is a rough $300,000. The instructor's about 100, and just 200,000 for equipment and supplies, and that's not adding in costs of facilities. It's very driven with all kind of motor controls and a lot of expensive types of equipment, robots. From my past experience, we had a program like this. A small robot can go 30,000 to 100,000 based on what you want. So that by putting together an agreement, you would look at an estimated transportation cost to get kids to Jersey Shore for a year at $15,000. And in turn, Jersey Shore would send some kids to us for the health occupations program. So they're the two programs we're looking at currently. We're looking at a 5-seat, 5 seats right now, and we're looking at a three-year agreement starting next school year. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. I gave you a little brief on what this is about, and some of you know we did chase this program in the past, and we think we could form a partnership here and give our kids another opportunity.
Kurt, I
Yeah.
have a question for you.
Yep.
All right. I just want to make sure that this isn't going to affect any of the programs that we have now. It isn't going to, correct?
No, it's not the same zip code. So when you look at program development, you look at kids where they can go. It like I was very honest with you. I told you that it does have a little machining and a little drafting, but it's not a machining or drafting program. This is a totally manufacturing technology program that goes way out into the electronics world, goes out into pneumatics, the hydraulics, and things that we don't offer students. And if you want to be an engineer, like an industrial engineer, stuff like that, this is more of the program you want. If you want to be a machinist, you stay with us. If you want to be a draftsman, you stay with us. If you want to be more into the engineering and on the floor at like a first quality and solving problems and their quality mechanics, you would go to this program.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other board members?
So basically the cost would just be the transportation then?
Yes. Nice. I think it's a big win-win for both districts. Dr. Omar, do you have any input?
Well, first of all, thank you to Keystone Central for entertaining this conversation. One of the things that Dr. Martin and I noticed as we discussed this as a starting point is we don't really have a lot of overlapping CTE programs. So this is something that we want to start small and just do with a few students to meet each other's needs. So we're not losing kids to other programs, but it could be something that we could expand on in the future as we look at our different program offerings.
Great.
That's great. Thank you.
I'd like you to thank your board, Dr. Omer, for entertaining this idea also.
I will do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a win-win for
Elizabeth,
everybody,
go ahead.
kids especially.
Okay, thank you. I didn't want to interrupt. I'm super excited about this. We got a little preview about it in the curricular, non-curricular committee meeting. And school districts can sometimes be very competitive against each other. Maybe a little competition is good. But bottom line, for all of us to survive and thrive, and for the kids, we got to start doing these collaborations. And this is going to be a model that I hope expands. So thank you all very, very much. We're really looking forward to hearing how this all works out for everyone. Thank you. Seriously, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just thank everybody that was involved with this for their thinking outside the box and being really creative. It's going to be a win-win for both schools.
So next steps would include, I have yet to see the draft agreement, but our solicitor is working on that draft agreement. My goal would be to have it on next week's agenda for your approval, but again, if we don't have it by then, it's going to have to be pushed to the July meeting.
Just so it's ready for fall.
Is that going to hold up the kids getting this next semester or?
I don't think so. Mr. Lynch and the principal from Jersey Shore who handles your CTC, his name's escaping me,
Stephen Keen.
Keen. Mr. Keen and Mr. Lynch, I've already been working on the logistics and the timeframe, so as long, and I think that from my perspective, they can continue to work on those logistics. It seems that both boards are fully supportive, even though we don't have a formal vote, so I'm comfortable with them continuing to work in that direction because no students would actually be enrolled until there's board approval.
Okay.
If I may stick my 2 cents in.
Sure, Wayne.
I congratulate the Career and Technology Department on a very good program, and also thank and congratulate the Jersey Shore School District. I think I'm very excited about this and can hardly wait to get it started.
Thanks, Wayne. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, if there isn't anything else, we're going to move on to a second presentation from Megan Hall and a few other folks, but I'm going to turn it over to Megan for an MTSS presentation and she can explain that acronym to you.
Yeah, Jackie, we actually are going to do the data part first, if that's okay with you guys. Justin and I will share the updated Ames Web and MAP growth data for the school year. I think doing that data component first will lead into the MTSS discussion and kind of help everybody make sense of that MTSS part, if that's okay with you guys.
I think that's a logical progression.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and Justin and I are going to present this part together. So let me just share my screen. So as you know, we have taken multiple opportunities this school year to share our student achievement data with you. And so coming off the close of the school year with our students, we had the opportunity to complete our Ames Web and bench our MAP assessments on all of our students K through 8. And so we wanted to take a few minutes tonight to just share with you the data that we got back from our spring benchmark assessments. And these 2 assessments that we're going to highlight tonight are the assessments that we give in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring. So these triangles probably look familiar to you because we have shared them with you multiple times. And in the co-curricular meeting, we've talked a lot about what these healthy triangles are supposed to look like. And so the data that's in front of you right now is the kindergarten reading data district-wide. And so when you're looking at a healthy triangle, what you're hoping for is about 80% of your students in the green, about 15% of your students in the yellow, and about 5% of your students in the red. And so when you look at our kindergarten fall data, you'll see that our triangle is a little bit reversed. We had more students in the red than we did in any other category. And then when you look at the winter data for kindergarten, you'll see that we saw a slight increase in that level of students who were in the green category. And by our spring data, we have our tier 1 students taking up the most part of that triangle. And we have our tier 2 taking up about 12%, and then about 23% or so taking up that tier 3. So when you look at this progression of growth over the year, you can just see the visual of that green growing, which is exactly what we want to be seeing. And what's incredible about all this data is that this was amongst a year of a lot of difficulty and a lot of changes. And so given the COVID year that we had and the changes in our instructional models, this data is really, really phenomenal. So if you'll remember at K1-2, we did the implementation of ECRI for the first time to teach the phonics component. And then we also included the Hegarty component to teach phonemic awareness. So making those curricular changes, I believe, is what's led to this real increase in student achievement. On to the next slide would be our kindergarten math. And so again, just looking across, our goal is to see the steady increase in the green by the spring. And we are right there at about that goal for what a healthy triangle looks like at the end of the school year. So that's kinder math. This is first grade reading. Again, we see a steady increase over the year. which is exactly what we want to see. This tier 3 for first grade is a little bit larger than we would like it to see. But again, all things considered for the year that we had, this is pretty tremendous growth of our students. And we kind of have a plan for addressing that at the first grade level next year. So, this is first grade math. Again, really steady progress, pretty significant growth in the number of students who are falling into the tier 1 category. This is second grade reading. Second grade, what's really phenomenal about the second grade data is that second graders were one of the groups that we were most worried about coming into the school year, just because they missed so much valuable instruction in first grade. And then also had that pretty large remote period in second grade. And first grade is a really pivotal year in reading instruction. And so we were worried about that loss of instruction last year. But what this showed is that with consistent explicit instruction of the ECRI and Hegarty, our students continued to make growth. This is second grade math. Again, that end triangle looking almost exactly like we would want it to. Justin is going to go over the map data with you for students in grades 3 through 8.
Thank you and good evening. This year was the first year that we were able to implement a benchmark assessment. It was a common assessment through grades 3 through 8 in both math and reading. So what you're seeing right now, think of this as a bird's eye view. So at this level, it's a broad overview. It's a starting point for us to look at, and then we utilize this data and various other reports to be able to drill down to the student level, and even down, teachers can utilize this specific assessment to get down to the actual skill level and how to group students. So this first report is grades 3 through 8, and it's the math report. And if you look at the bar graph at the bottom, that's really what we're focusing on here, and this is based around growth. The gold diamond is really the target from when the students take their fall assessment. It makes a projection based on all of the scores and the nationally normed averages, and it projects how far our students should grow. So again, you can look, math was a concern of ours. It was a concern across the Commonwealth as well as the country because students last year missed a good chunk of school. You can see that grades 3 through 8 look fairly good. We had some significant growth there and actually exceeded grades 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8 exceeded what those projections were going to be. So we felt really good about math and how those results were. So if you take a look at reading, so this is not necessarily a surprise, but again, we have a lot of concerns here. You can obviously see one outlier in the entire group, and as you go through and get to grade 8, you're actually seeing negative growth, which means they didn't project the way that we thought that they should. But when you look at the outlier, it's grade 3. They got really close to where they were projected to be. And when we had some conversations around this, and you think about the why, so why does it look so different? Well, the one thing that we know for sure is there's more supports at the elementary level than you have when you start to get to the secondary. So we know that we also had the PSSA, the state assessment. They take those results and not only break it down into proficiencies, but then they also, we have access to a growth report, and we can utilize both assessments here to see if our map data was accurate, if it was just basically student performance, but there's also, again, if grade 3 performed at this higher level, the trend should follow just the same as it did with math. So we have had some conversations already at the middle school with the instructional coaches as well as the administration, and looking at the data, reviewing the data. One of the things that we know that this year wasn't typical. We had 10 weeks of full remote learning, and again, that's coming off of a school year that was shortened last year. And if you remember last school year, the middle school elementaries had enrichment type activities that they were doing, but pretty much the actual instruction and content, it was not anywhere close to what we did this year. But we still had 10 weeks off for full remote learning, 3 weeks of hybrid learning, instructional implications that just due to our COVID safety plan. When you go into a classroom and you look, we had to keep kids 6 feet apart. We had to limit the social interaction. We had to limit the cooperative groups. And we know that one of the ways that we learn as individuals is we learn through others. We learn through collaboration. And so just having COVID to deal with, it really limited best practice strategies that we know impact learning and achievement. And you also had, just with that, students traveling in and out of school being on quarantine due to contact tracing. When you look at math, we know that the creation and implementation of pacing guides, they were revised, and we feel that that revision to the pacing guides and looking at the curriculum and what's being delivered in the classroom definitely is showing that contribution to the growth and students meeting those expectations. When you look at reading, again, that implementation of the new curriculum and the equity and integrity at the elementary level, aligning instruction to the science of reading, and the implementation of staggered intervention periods with timely and targeted skill-based interventions led to an increase in student achievement. Third grade utilized ECRI during intervention time, and again, they're the outlier when we look at that result. I can also tell you during the opportunity that I had covering Mill Hall Elementary, and again, had this discussion not only with teachers, but also with other administrators. When I walked into that kindergarten classroom toward the end of the year, I was seeing skills, phonemic awareness, spelling, students recognizing sight words that typically I wasn't seeing before until first grade. It is absolutely amazing what the targeted instruction and the interventions and that implementation of ECRI has done for our students and helping them. I can't imagine what it's going to be like now in a few years when we get these students cycled through, and I'm very, very curious to see and anxious to see the progress that they're going to make. It's very, very exciting. I wish we could demonstrate that to you, but it was super exciting to me to see how much these kids have progressed compared to what I've observed in the past.
Perfect. So we're going to wrap up this part with just talking about our next steps. So we definitely believe in the growth mindset. We know that we always will have room for improvement and things to work on. So in order to kind of evaluate where we are and analyze where we need to go, we have started, like Justin said, having conversations with our instructional coaches, some of our DPLs and our administrative team about what we could do for grades 4 through 8 in the reading category to really make sure that our students are receiving the level of instruction that they need in order to close the skill gaps that they have. So in grades 4 through 8, we're looking at adding a program called Rewards, which is very explicit instruction in phonics and phonemic awareness, decoding, vocabulary, and comprehension in order to sort of close those achievement gaps that our students have. And a very similar approach in grades 7 and 8, a program called Read to Achieve that would become part of our core instruction. And again, it has that explicit instruction that would align with what we are seeing as holes in our students' skills, mainly in the areas of decoding. And so we know that's really important to close those skill gaps because we all fully believe that literacy is the key to success. And we know that if our students are leaving middle school with serious reading deficits, it gets harder and harder to close those skill gaps every year. So we want to make sure that we put support in place next year for our middle school students to have the opportunity to close those skill gaps. We are also looking at the implementation of Study Island, which allows us to deliver specific skill-based instruction and practice for students. We're also going to focus on engaging students in learning by using small group instruction really effectively next school year. And so like Justin said before, small group kind of took a back seat this year because of safety protocols, but it is something that we know really effective small group instruction can really help students grow. We're also going to focus on PLCs and the use of the assessment data sources to drive instruction, because we know that's really important to student achievement. And we're also going to utilize our interventionists at the middle school to provide those timely and targeted interventions in order to close those skill gaps. So essentially what we're looking to do at the middle school next year is very much mimic what we have in place currently at the elementary level, because we have seen that when we put the supports in place, our students are successful. So we're hoping to mimic that process at the middle school next year in order to see increased student achievement. So we just wanted to take some time to share that data with you, because it is incredibly exciting to see where we are from where we came. And we just wanted to take a few minutes to share that data with you. Are there any questions about the data?
I actually have a question for Justin. Justin, it's Randy. How these scores that we see, do they include our Cyber Academy students?
Yes, they do. As many as we could get, in the same with remote learners.
Okay, thank you.
Justin and Megan, I don't know who wants to address this, but I think it's something worth pointing out to the board. In K1 and 2, we had several students who were remote for part of the year and a handful that stayed remote the full year. Have you been able to extract the data to determine how did our remote students grow compared to our students that were in class?
We have been able to extract that data for K1-2, and the students who were fully assessed using Ames Web in reading and math, we had all of our remote students, I think with the exception of one, came out as a tier 3 at the spring. And so we hardly saw any growth from those students from fall to spring. And what's interesting about that is that they were using the same instructional tools. They were using the ECRI, they were using the Heggerty. And it is certainly by no fault of those remote teachers. They did a fantastic job with the circumstances that it takes to be a fully remote teacher, but we did not see the growth from our remote students that we saw from our in-person students. Everyone was tier 3 except for, with the exception of one who was tier 2.
Were you able to do that for the other grade levels, just K to 2?
Justin, I don't know that we pulled that out for, well, K1-2 was the only place that we held had one remote teacher teaching full remote. There were a few students that our K1-2 teachers did have on remote. They kept them if they were on quarantine for shorter periods. There were some instances in which teachers said, no, I'll keep them. But I guess the key takeaway is we know that with direct explicit instruction in our classrooms, the results are drastically different from the same instruction being done remotely in grades K1 and 2. I think there's a lot to be said for the developmental level, the engagement. The other piece, just this is my take on it, is that when you're delivering, that program is intended to be an in-person program. And when you're teaching reading and literacy at that level, there's a lot to be said for the choral reading and the hearing and everybody at once saying those things. And just as right now, if there were 4 of us trying to talk at once, we can't hear everyone. And so I think that even though our teachers were delivering the program remotely, I'm not sure that the benefits to the students, because of the barriers in the technology, really gave them the full, I guess, the full experience I'm attributing that to. I also want to make a comment that the results of the, first of all, thank you to the board for giving us the tools such as Ames Web and math, which you'll see the renewals are on tonight's meeting agenda, to do this. And when we're looking at saying to you, how are our students growing? That's not against our own students. That's norm referenced against all students in the nation who took that same assessment in the same window of time. And so we're we're comparing ourselves to students across the nation at those grade levels. So it's a really valid and valid way to measure growth. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'd like to say is thank you for the resources that we were able to employ, because we can see direct results, even during a pandemic, from direct explicit instruction. What can we do in a regular school year? And the places that you see no changes to curriculum or implementation, we didn't make any changes in grades 4 through 8 in literacy. We made changes in math based on pacing guides, not materials, but pacing guides and expectations. We changed curriculum materials, K2 explicitly, some changes in grade 3 in the intervention time with those same materials. So clearly, the team has decided that we need direct explicit instruction in grades 4 through 8 in literacy interventions, which you'll also see a proposal on tonight's agenda asking for a purchase with the 95% group. And that's where the funds would come from to purchase the programs that Megan referenced earlier, such as rewards and Read to Achieve. Then what we will be looking at is hopefully this time next year when we're sitting down with you, we're going to be able to see in the spring growth across all grade levels next year as well. The other thing that's going to be interesting to watch is because of our Keystone Camp that's coming up, that's just learning acceleration. We're not trying to remediate, we're trying to continue the good things that are going on in our classrooms by providing, again, explicit instruction throughout the summer to stop the summer slide. So it'll be interesting to see how our students come in the fall in the next grade level, the same cohort of students. Did we stop the summer slide, and how did that work for the students who attended Keystone Camp versus the students who did not attend Keystone Camp? So we'll be able to draw some really great inferences from that, and that will inform our practice and our curricular decisions moving forward.
Year-round school.
Jackie,
As long as they're gonna pay us.
just out of curiosity, you mentioned about that 95% group. I actually clicked on that PDF to take a look at what's going on with it. It doesn't open.
Okay. We'll try to
So-
fix that.
Thank you.
Any other questions related to the data before we head into the MTSS piece?
Well, I think the one that's most encouraging was the second grade data, because like I think Justin said, or Megan, they lost those 3 months at the end of last year, which was crucial. I mean, first grade is so crucial to begin with, as far as both math and reading. And the fact that they came out and did so well, given that, handicapped, so to speak, because it was a lot of instruction. I think that even more of a testament to what, these programs are doing. So I'm excited about it. I'll really be excited, like you said, to see all these numbers next year.
Yeah, and Jeff, I would echo that in the excitement of our team. It's been a really hard year for our teachers, and when this data started rolling in, the amount of smiles that I saw were just so proportionally high from what we've seen all year, because it was just so good to see the data reflect all of the hard work that we've put into implementation during a pandemic, and to see student growth that is this remarkable amongst all those things, I think just gave our teachers a little pep in their step at the end, because it's just so encouraging to see hard work pay off. So we are equally as excited, and it was a good way to end a hard year.
So kudos, Megan, to you, the teachers, the instructional coaches, the DPLs, those, it really is a team effort to get that to work on a daily basis.
I am curious. The language arts, the reading, the gold or the gold diamonds we have, that part there, was that we just shot too high and that we didn't make it, or?
No, that's where the nationwide, that's where all kids should be. That's the
Right.
growth target. We
Okay.
missed it in reading in 4 through 8, because we didn't make any changes there
Okay,
this year. But we
4
are.
through 8, but that's actually scheduled for like this coming year. Or-
Yes, we're going to we didn't make changes last year in those grade levels.
Right, because we're
But-
concentrating on the younger.
The plan is
But
to
now-
add
Okay,
changes there.
okay,
Yep, you got it.
just wanted to make sure.
You got it.
All right, so I think that bleeds really nicely into our next presentation, which is about the MTSS process that our team has been undergoing. MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, and I know that Jackie has spent a lot of time, I spent a lot of time talking to the curricular committee about MTSS and our plans and the development of this system. And I know Jackie always talks about that three-dimensional pyramid of the academic, behavioral, and social emotional learning for our students. And again, having those tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1 is that instruction that all students get. Tier 2 is the instruction that some students get. And tier 3 is that instruction that only a few students get. So we have a team that has been working through the winter and the spring very hard amidst everything else to get this MTSS process developed and planned out for implementation next school year. So this evening I have on some of our team, we have Stephen Hanna, who is a school psychologist. We have Terry Markle, who is an interventionist and also the literacy DPL. And we also have Jamie Gensel, who is a learning support teacher at Renova Elementary. So I'm going to share my screen with you for their presentation, but I am going to kick it to Stephen in order to take you through that presentation.
Thank you, Megan. So as Megan was saying, this is MTSS. It's multi-tiered systems of support. And we have focused primarily on the area of reading. We have a large team. And the thing about this team is it doesn't include everybody on it, technically. Because there's teachers and interventionists that are working very hard. And you saw that second and first grade and kindergarten growth. And there's a lot of people that are involved, but this is our core team here. And we have had the help of the IU to consult with us, to guide us, to make sure that we're taking the right steps and walking us through this process that is MTSS. So I'd like to thank everybody as a part of it. MTSS is a systematic approach. It's continually evolving. What we do is we take the data that we see, like you saw today with the benchmark data, and we use that to drive our instruction. It involves using a lot of highly skilled people, teachers, school psychologists, counselors, curriculum directors, to really take a deep dive and problem solve the issues that we're currently dealing with based on the data that we're seeing. It's the way that we do business. And so when we look at that data, we try to make decisions based on that to provide more evidence-based, highly evidence-based instruction and interventions and assessments, and analyze that data to then make decisions and problem solve. What it does for us too is, to describe it a little bit, is it's like a prescription. Many people have medical issues, and these medical issues can be solved by different medications or even surgery if needed. Sometimes you would consider our special education program the surgery aspect of MTSS. But what we try to do is we try to see if there's medications or therapies or other ways of helping deal with these reading issues that the students are currently dealing with. And we use that data to develop a prescription that will work for that student to help them grow and make the necessary growth. Because as we know, if they're not making that growth early on, it becomes more and more difficult. It's also highly organized, and that's the thing that the team has really contributed to so far. Is they've dedicated a lot of time and effort, their own time and personal time, to really develop a system that when it goes out to those teachers, they're able to know right away what exactly they need to do in terms of the next steps for these students and implementing it to sustain it over time and sustain growth, and to really meet all students' needs and ensure that we're using fidelity too to implement those interventions effectively and provide training if we need to help work those interventions and make them more successful. It's just setting a higher expectation and evolving. So what we do is we analyze the data. I will show more of a visual here in the next slide, but just to kind of go over this quickly, we take the identification data that we have, the benchmark data, as you saw at the beginning of the year, and we look at that data to say, okay, who can we continue with those tier 1 instruction levels, and who needs a little bit more support? And that allows us to really target specific students, and then even do further assessments to make sure that we're hitting the skill needs that student has, because every student comes with different skill levels and needs. So this is a very targeted system. It's intensive. We continue to collect data through things like our Ames Web program to make sure, is this intervention working? And we try to use that to evaluate it and make shifts and changes when we need to. So again, this is a very business kind of perspective to learning, but with the amount of support and communication with parents, we can really come up with a prescription model that's going to be tailored to each of those students who's really struggling to meet those needs, and make sure that they can continue to progress as they work on. It's also a much more efficient system because it provides us a way to analyze that data. And if somebody's having success, we continue that, or we provide less intensive support. And we're going to talk more about that as the presentation goes on. But just to go on to the next slide to kind of provide a visual of that. MTSS is more than just academics. It's also behavior and social emotional. And what we do is we try to define problems that we're seeing, analyze those problems as a group, implement interventions to try and meet those needs, and then evaluate whether those interventions work. And as you can see on the graph on the right, there's a lot of dots and things, and it kind of looks like the stock market every now and then, but it's student data. And what this allows us to do is we set goals for students, and you'll see that big dark line going all the way up to a gold star, or at least in Ames Web, that's how it appears. And that gives us a goal for that student based on where they started at to get them to close those gaps that they need. And so we'll start out with the intervention. And as you can see, that first intervention wasn't very successful. And then we move on to a second intervention based on our problem solving that we did with our teachers and other professionals to make a decision. And as you see, that intervention was successful, but maybe it wasn't making quite the growth that we needed to. So we tried something else. Maybe we added more time for that student. And we continually, constantly reevaluate these things to make sure that we're seeing progress, and we also know what has been successful for the student. So when we look at this data again, we can make a decision that will most meet that student's needs. So kind of to describe that, MTSS also is a special education identification model, which does help our school psychologists. And as you'll see on the next slide, we had an old model. The old model was based on the idea of discrepancies. And so just to kind of give you a basic understanding of what we were doing is, if a student came in with 100 IQ, which is right in the middle average, we were looking at whether or not they were at a 70 for that score, showing that they were weak enough that they needed more services. This has been the ongoing dilemma with special education for a while now, and why they came up with the No Child Left Behind Act and some of the revisions that they made to the individualized IDEA. So again, what we were doing is, before we were looking to see if there's a large discrepancy. And it was somewhat systematic in terms of, it was very rigid in terms of whether students qualified or didn't qualify. And what they found in this old model is that they were missing students. Students that needed support weren't showing discrepancies early enough and weren't able to get that special education support if they needed it at times. They also tended to base this information on more of one score, whether or not they did really well with the school psychologist that day when they were working on their achievement test or even their cognitive test. And as we know, not everyone performs the same on the same day. And we have all this data now that we have as a resource that sometimes wasn't utilized in making those decisions. Even though obviously our district has tried to make those decisions as best as possible based on all the information that we have available. But this was a problem with the old model. It also, it doesn't support the correct students at times. And it also relied on that cognitive score. And what we found through the new model and some of the business model is that we really sometimes need to ignore some of those cognitive abilities, because with the new model, we can usually get these students to catch up. And you saw the growth from the previous data from K-2. And a lot of these students who become more successful do tend to have sometimes more skills in certain areas. So with the new model, what it provides us is we can look at those interventions and see if they were successful. And then if we're trying prescription after prescription, or if in another way of looking at it, a different lens on a glass, on your glasses, and it's still not becoming clearer, what we can do then is look, maybe there is something that requires more intensive support, and we can provide that surgery through special education. So again, the MTSS model is the new model, and it provides interventions to help meet those needs. We look and evaluate growth over time. By the time that we get to the point that we're looking at evaluation, we know better, what has worked and what hasn't worked for this child. It's also a collaborative process. We're including all people in it. The parents are much more included in that decision-making process, and also the teachers and the instructional coaches. And so by the time we get to a point of looking at identification for special education, we know ahead of time, this is a student who has significant issues. The current prescriptions aren't working. And we're able to look at all that data to really make the best decision to help support that student. And so one of the cons sometimes of this model is that it takes a lot of time in terms of the staffing, but I also consider it a positive of this model, because by the time we get to that level of support, we really do see, we have a good knowledge of what that student's capable of and what they're able to do. And so when you think of an MTSS model, you can also think of our motto for KCSD, respect for yesterday's data, pride in today's decision-making, and plans for tomorrow in terms of evolving. Now I'm going to hand it off to Jamie Gensel.
Hi, everyone. I am a learning support teacher at Renove Elementary, so this really kind of hits home for me. The data points that Stephen was really talking about are something that is more familiar with special ed, and really this process kind of is almost really familiar to me as well. The 5 essential components that are on your screen right now really kind of mimic some of the things that go on in special ed, but now will be available to really all students. So that tightness and the team approach, reviewing the data, involving the family, having layered supports throughout the student's day, and those evidence-based practices. Going back up to the team-driven shared leadership, we have already created the core team. They have been working on the framework for KCSD. Those core team members really have diverse backgrounds and knowledge bases for intervention and assessment. That core team then will break down into building level teams, and they will be implementing the MTSS framework at their home schools at the beginning of this school year coming up. Those MTSS building level, what they'll be doing through the database problem solving and decision making component, will be looking at the building level with other team members. They will be meeting through specified points throughout the school year. They will be reviewing student progress, determining that student's rate of improvement, discussing whether further intervention, assessment, or possibly, like Stephen said, maybe even an evaluation could be needed. And possibly, on a good note, if that level of intervention has demonstrated student success and achievement, and if it could be continued or maybe even lessened. The family, school, and community partnering is essential. We know that students work best when all 3, home, school, community, are working together, really an all hands on deck approach. That means involving those parents in the child's progress, coordinating with outside agencies to provide additional resources, and then even parent training opportunities so they know how best to work with their child. And then the last two I've kind of lumped together because really, as you see in Megan's kind of triangle, that continuum of support has really those evidence-based practices intertwined through it. In that tier 1 that you saw, students will all be able to access that core, universal, high quality instruction. They will be screened really at the beginning of the year, and those students who are not meeting those grade level benchmarks will be looked at for a possible tier 2 intervention, which is highly skill based and really works on trying to remediate those skills so that students can really make sense of and access that grade level curriculum and that tier 1 base. And then through successful data tracking, progress monitoring heavily, and looking at and seeing if those evidence-based practices and skills are working for those students, or if further intervention is needed. Students at the tier 2 level would then possibly, if they were making less than expected progress, would move to tier 3, which is where I work, in that highest level of intervention through the staff, creating really individual plans for students to get them the sources of help they need. That can vary in intensity of instruction, the sizing of the grouping for students, going down to 3 or less, or possibly even 1 student at a time, varying the frequency of doses that you would provide instruction for students, and the duration of the intervention, and maybe meeting more frequently with those team members that are those core, and possibly maybe even changing an intervention or heading to an evaluation at that point. And the next slide really talks about, again, there's 3 key components that we really have to implement. MTSS is all about the data. So using the data, it's no longer a gut feeling, or I think this child might be eligible for special ed. We're going to have the data to really know for sure either what works for the student or what that student needs to, where that student needs to head to next. And using those evidence-based practices for student outcomes, you could see kind of the difference in some of the data in that K1 and 2, as we've used some of those evidence-based practices, and small group is one of them as well, that we really need to kind of utilize, especially in that tier 2, but most definitely in that tier 3. And creating and using those systems that the adults need to utilize to make those decisions with clarity for those students so we can provide those services. And then I'm going to go and hand it off to Terry Markle.
Great, thank you, Jamie. Good evening, everyone. I am the interventionist at Woodward Elementary. I am also the department leader for the interventionist team, the librarians, and K-12 literacy. So I'm just going to wrap up our MTSS presentation, really kind of echoing what Jamie and Stephen have already said. So this whole process is really about working together. It's collaboration. So we will have, we actually have a calendar that we have built, and we will be having scheduled data team meetings. And so we will be getting together regularly to talk about that data, talk about what's working, what is not working, possibly changing out groups, changing out kids in the groups. When we think about title, you know, we've always said that it's always been that the kids, it's like a life sentence for them. Once they got in title, they never got out. And this year we are seeing that a lot differently with the implementation of ECRI and Hegarty. We are able to move kids in and out of tiers quicker with that direct instruction. I'm pretty excited for next year, knowing that we'll be able to really hit in on those small groups. So we should really be seeing kids really moving a lot quicker in the process. So that's pretty exciting for us. And so we will, like I said, be spending those data team meetings, just talking about that data and talking about the kiddos and what they need. With this, we will also be collaborating with parents and making sure that they understand what is happening with their kiddo at school and what we are providing for them, letting them know about the data and what it means, and then, you know, setting those goals for those kiddos. And that is actually linked back to our federal program, our monitoring guidelines. So it's all part of that. So it wraps up nicely and connects nicely. And lastly, we will be doing grade level meetings. Those will be monthly so that we can continue to talk about those kiddos, not only academic, but also the behavioral side and the social emotional side. Next slide, Megan. Thank you. And then we've already discussed this as well. We have the district team, which was the second slide in the presentation. which encompasses a lot of stakeholders throughout the district. And then we'll have those building level teams, which will be the interventionists, the coaches, the principals, special education staff, and then the regular teachers on those teams. Any questions?
And one thing I want to mention there too, we've been working on that academic, kind of focusing on that academic side of that pyramid, but Dr. Barnhart and Christina Manning have been leading the charge on the behavior side and the social emotional side. So we are concurrently working on all three sides of the triangle, and we definitely have pockets of these systems in place already, but what this allows us to do is really have a uniform practice put into place so that we are implementing with fidelity and we are implementing consistently across all of our buildings in the district. So that's really part of the goal in putting all of this framework into place, is to provide that consistency and implementation.
Another thing to note is only 3% of schools in the state are actually MTSS approved, and it's something that we're working towards.
Thank you so much. I think that you covered an awful lot in a short period of time, and maybe this was a lot more information for our board members than they would typically get in this area. However, I think it's important for the board members to see some of the fruits of the labor that have been going on, and the ways that you've been supporting this educational system, and that we're taking a more systemic approach. It's research-based, and putting it together in a formal thing. I think that Keystone Central has for decades had great things happening in silos and in pockets around the district, but this will consistently provide support and resources to all teachers in an equitable fashion, which then gives us an equitable approach to education across the district. Thank you. All right, kudos, guys. Megan, if you wouldn't mind sharing me into that presentation so I can send it to the board members, the MTSS presentation.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Moving on, hearing of visitors. Don't believe we have anybody signed up today to speak. So we'll move on to Dr. Martin's report. Okay, thank you. Last week, our school district graduated 27 seniors from Bucktail High School and 280 students from Central Mountain High School. I would like to congratulate Mr. Hall and Mr. Morelli, who both hosted their first graduation ceremonies as principals. A lot of work goes into graduation, and both ceremonies were just amazing. Thank you both. And please extend my thanks to those who helped you in the planning and implementation of those days. I know several people helped you with that. I'd also like to share some information regarding a mobile vaccination clinic. There is going to be an LHU COVID-19 vaccine drive-through clinic. That's going to be on Friday, June 25th and Monday, June 28th from 12 to 4 in the LHU Student Rec Center parking lot. No, people do not have to register, and it is 2 different types of vaccines are available there, the Johnson & Johnson and the Pfizer. And Pfizer is available for anyone 12 and over as well. So I have been in touch with UPMC about having a mobile clinic here at the school district for our families. And they've asked us to hold off and wait and see how this drive-through clinic goes and what the response is from the community before we plan anything additional. So at this point, we're just partnering and promoting the June clinic before we embark on our own. According to our Keystone Camp coordinator, Leslie Skirtage, there are over 300 students enrolled for the Summer Learning Acceleration Program. Keystone Camp will run for 5 weeks beginning on July 12th. I know many preparations are being used to get ready for that. PDE has finally released guidance for schools regarding a safe return to in-person instruction and a continuity of services plan. This plan is going to require time for public comment and local approval by this board, as well as submission to PDE by July 30th. That's a quick turnaround time. They have streamlined the plan. It's not as long, it addresses the same things, but it's a much better format. So I am preparing to meet with members of the administration to get this plan ready to present to you at the July 1 work session. That will provide a full week of public time for public comment prior to the anticipated approval date by the board of June 8th. And congratulations to the Central Mountain baseball team, whose 3-2 win today over West Allegheny advances them to the 5A semifinal round in the state tournament. They will play again on Monday, and if they're successful, then they'll play in the state finals on Wednesday. So we wish them well. And I want to make one more acknowledgement, and that would be that tonight would be the last board meeting for two of our principals, Paula Loopold and Robin Taranto, who are gracefully retiring from their service in our district. But of course, as we're sad to see them both go, we also would like to welcome Tyler Barth and Dr. Amy Breon, who are joining us tonight for the first time. They're officially on board with us and transitioning. So welcome, Tyler and Amy.
Welcome, guys.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to our reports from the last month, treasury report, financial reports, and our student enrollment reports. Our student enrollment is going up.
It is going up.
Was it 5? Was it 5?
I think it went up by 5 in the last month, but
Always good to see. It's a start. Does anybody have any other questions on those reports?
Question on the financial report.
Okay.
Sorry, Susan. I'm gonna throw you a curveball. A couple hours before the meeting, I saw where Wolf's proposal, 1 billion more for education for districts that are considered poverty. Would we be considered in that group?
Based on our federal allocation for funds, I would say yes.
So there is a chance.
I haven't seen any of the details, so I
Okay,
can't.
I didn't
say
either,
what's
that's
in
why I was
there,
just
but
curious.
We are a high poverty
Okay,
school,
Just
yes.
curious.
that wasn't a curveball.
No.
I usually try to warn her when I throw a question at her.
So good.
If I may say something here while we're on that subject, I think it behooves us to make contact with our state representative and also our state senators, you know, and express our opinions on the need for that support for public school education. And also to oppose, I forget the name of the Senate bill that would take millions of dollars away from public schools and put them into private schools. I think our position should be public money for public schools. Private schools should be supported with private money.
Very nicely stated, Wayne. Yes. Okay. Under section F, under the board, we need to appoint 2 delegates to the assembly for the meeting on October 23rd. So anybody? Oh, 3 spaces. Sorry, 3. 3 delegates for voting. Anybody volunteering, or do you just want me to appoint you and say you're it?
I did it last year, so.
Jeff?
Jeff's quietly trying to get out of this.
Oh, so you're saying you don't want to?
Yeah.
I thought you were saying you're experienced.
Yeah, that's fine.
It was not a great experience, to put it that way.
Okay.
Because it was all virtual and it was long.
Long. Okay. So I have no problem being a delegate. Randy, come on, you're a vice
It's
president.
retail. I work retail.
Roger,
Fine.
thank you. Who else is on here? Wayne?
If my health situation improves, I might be able to, but I can't promise you that. So I wouldn't depend on me.
All right, well, if we need to, we'll deal.
2 of the 3.
Yeah, so that works.
It's not till October at 9 a.m.
Yeah. And it's
As I know my schedule, Tracy, I'll try to get a hold of it early enough to let you know.
Saturday. We'll make it work. All right.
Hold it, it's a Saturday?
Saturday at 9.
No.
So the next 2 items are plans for emergency instructional time for the district and also for the CTC.
Yeah, and just a few words on this. The board approved something of this nature last year. It basically, your approval on this is the way that the state is allowing us to get around school code for the 180 days and the seat hours in school, and a permit for remote schooling in the event that we need it for emergency situations. I did get final word that we are permitted to use remote learning days. The superintendent is permitted to use remote learning days if the board approves this plan in the event of pandemic-related things or even inclement weather. So what you'll also see is a second attachment, which shows the board as part of our plan, exactly what is expected on a full remote learning day. So for all employees, so the plan is spelled out, so it's not ambiguous and would be put in place with all employees knowing those expectations at the start of the school year in case at any point in time we would have to go to full remote again.
Dr. Martin, you said, so go ahead, Jeff.
I'm just curious, is there a limit on the number that you can use?
Not through this, it's separate than the FID day. We did not do a FID day application.
Right.
We missed the deadline for that, but part of the reason we missed the deadline is because we don't feel it's a very good way to use remote learning. It requires you to use asynchronous learning on FID days, meaning, you know, you're not really continuing. It's a separate, it's all of a sudden like you stop and do a separate lesson plan, which does not continue the current learning. I don't expect this to be in place for next, the 22-23 school year. I think we should apply for FID days and use a synchronous remote option, then let some things pan out. But for next year, this is a good option for us.
Dr. Martin, would you be letting the parents also know what's expected? I mean, it's one thing to let the teachers know that, hey, kindergarten, first or second grade, 100 minutes to 40. But I think we need to make sure the parents are aware that they're going to be expected to be on there, their children are going to be expected to be on there.
Absolutely. The students and the parents need to be informed of what are the expectations on those days and how is attendance being counted, what is expected. And there is some leeway in there that if somebody can't be online, that there is a 3-day grace period, but instruction will continue for direct instruction for those that are able to log on and be on synchronously. We shouldn't punish everyone by not having instruction when a few can't do it. And the few that can't shouldn't be punished in the long run. My biggest concern has been special education services being delivered remotely. We're going to do that, but if we can't get that doesn't work on that particular day with a particular student, we will make up those services within the 6-day cycle. So that was something that was pretty important to me, as well as our non-instructional staff need to know exactly what is expected of them on a remote learning day.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to business. Nope, no, we won't. Sorry about that. Skip the minutes. So we have the minutes from last month's work session voting meeting, the co-curricular curricular meeting, and the facilities committee meeting. Any comments or questions on those? Okay, now we move on to business. We'll go through them one by one. Stop me if you have any questions, because there's a lot on here. There's the bills for payment.
Actually, I'm kind of looking for something right now.
Well, I've got one for you. I just noticed, and I was scrolling through the pages. There was a bill for, I forget what page it was on, 3 or 4, for electricity for Dickey School. $300 and some. I don't know.
We didn't close yet on Dickey.
Okay, I figured that was probably it, but
When is that date?
I don't know.
Okay.
Reading on some paperwork from the buyer.
okay.
Roger, did you find what you were looking for?
Nope, I know it's in here somewhere though.
You can let me know when you find something. I can get an answer for you.
So then we have depositories for the 2021-22 school year. Questions there? The final budget for the year. There hasn't been any changes since last month's meeting. Any questions on that?
Just to reemphasize, this has no tax increase with it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Just wanted to repeat that.
Thanks, Wayne. It's good to be repeated.
Could you say that one more time, Wayne, please?
No more damn taxes.
Good deal.
All right. H4 is the resolution for the homestead and farmstead. Any questions on that? Okay. Yep, H5 is budget transfers. Anything there? And then committed funds. Our next is a grant. We're going to approve it for the building an inclusive CNC apprenticeship ecosystem in Central PA.
Mr. Lynch, do you have anything to add about that grant?
Yes, that is part of the workforce development grant that was put back on the shelf during COVID through labor and industry. And we're finally getting some money out of that grant. It's taken forever. But we've already started like instruction with adults and everything else. The thing you won't see on that figure is when we start teaching again in the fall, we'll get $75 an hour just for the use of our facility through that grant also.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
Next is agreement with infant development for transportation. And Marikey Behavioral Health Agreement.
This would be like a renewal. We've had agreements with them as well as the new story agreement that's next.
The new story. Next is an IU agreement for special ed services not to exceed over $410,000. Any questions or comments on that? And next is agreement for NWA, the map growth system, not to exceed $23,580 with 6,636 paid for by title funds and 16,944 paid by the general fund.
That's to assess 3rd through 8th grade, right?
Yes, and Ames Web also is enough licenses for all students with IEPs up through 12th grade. Just share my screen.
Excuse me, Tracy?
Yes, Elizabeth?
I'm sorry, I just have a quick question. A lot of these agreements the districts had really great relationships with, nothing's really changed, but I don't want to ask a question for everyone because I'd waste time. But if someone in administration or business, someone, just let us know, is there any of these agreements that has changed dramatically or incrementally or anything that's different that we should really know about? That would be really helpful. Otherwise, they seem pretty straightforward.
Yeah, they're pretty straightforward, Elizabeth. Our administrative team has reviewed them as well as our business manager prior to any contracts going on the agenda. And there may be some small price increases, like annual increases for assessments, but they're still within reason as the per pupil rate that we believe they're still worth pursuing.
Okay, thank you very much, because I'm sure a lot of people out there don't know your back history with all of these and this, so that really is very helpful. Seriously, thank you so much. This is nothing new, nothing new.
Thank you. I'm sharing with you the 95 group. For some reason, there was a glitch in the attachment. Susan's tried several times and it's attached, but it won't open. So all of the board members have this agreement in your email, but just wanted to show you. It's really more of the phonics materials and advanced phonics lessons with decodable passages. There's a few things on here to supplement the K1-2 materials that we already have, but also adding those materials for some of the upper grades that we talked about earlier in the literacy interventions. And really the cost of this per pupil is very small per teacher for the amount of students that it's serving. We're looking at serving 2,000 students.
Is this a one-time, or is it like next year, if we want to do it again, it's reoccurring?
No, they're as far as I know, Megan, if I'm correct, these are not
This is a one-time purchase. The only thing that would come later might be the replacement of some materials as they get used and worn, but that would be it. It is not a yearly cost. It's a one-time purchase for the most part.
Thank you.
They're
Yep.
not disposables.
That's why I was curious.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, but board members, if you wanted to see that in more detail, it is in your email.
Then the next is the Learning 2025 Network, 14,000, paid for by title grant.
This is the program that I had shared with the full board before. We are a demonstration. We've been accepted as a demonstration site. And so this would be the fee for the services and the networking that goes along with that process.
Okay, I actually have a little bit of an issue with this whole program. What I'm actually seeing is this actually is an opening in which certain programs could be brought in through, because once the federal government actually gets their clause into this, there's no way that we're going to be able to get out of it. Okay. The big thing that I'm looking at is a lot of the things that were mentioned in this are very similar in relationship to critical race theory issues. And I am very concerned about that. Now, I know that you stated that we can do certain things, okay, and not do other things. If that is the case, that's fine. However,
We're in total control. We're in total control of anything that's implemented in the district.
I hope you're right, because
I
based on what
guarantee-
I'm seeing,
I promise you, there's nothing in this agreement that forces us to do any curricular changes or utilize anything from an outside source. There's nothing that requires us to do that. And there's also board policy for curriculum resources and curriculum that is controlled completely by the local board.
I understand that. However, once we start opening up to let the federal government in,
This isn't the
they could
federal
actually,
government.
well, it is sourced or it is brought down by that entire association of yours, correct?
That's not a government association. It's the association of
And
school
the superintendent
administrators.
or
School
administrators,
administrators, yeah.
okay. And where do they get
It's
their
not-
guidance?
From research, not from the Department of Ed. They're an independent, it's just like PSBA. It's a separate organization. PSBA and PASA are also supporting that, which are our local organizations.
As the chairman of the policy committee, if I can jump in here, we have policies, which is our legislation that deals with this curriculum, which gives the school district complete control over its own curriculum. The only thing that can supersede the school district is the state government, not some association or any other. Only the state government can supersede it, or the federal government. Otherwise, we have policy, that's our legislation. That's where we govern our own curriculum.
I understand that completely, Wayne. All right. The problem is that in the past couple months, we've all seen how the state can supersede what we as a board wish. All right. And my concern is by opening this up, certain things are going to be starting to pushed into our curriculum, whether we want it or not.
If it's pushed into our curriculum, it has to be done by the state, not by any association or any outfit outside of the state government.
Okay, well,
if the state does it, then that supersedes us. We can't do anything about that. But just because an association advocates this or that, that means nothing until the state acts upon it, if it does.
Okay, well, I'll have more information on this for the voting session. So this is only a work session. I'm just bringing it up, letting you know that I have some concerns.
I'm not sure that there's a clear understanding though, Roger, of what this Learning 2025 is, because it's not a curricular program.
Well, I understand, but there's a lot of equity-driven stuff that is in this.
But equity is not just race. Equity is poverty. Equity is special education.
Then why
students
can't
with
we just
disability.
say equality? Okay, instead of just having equity, why isn't it equality? That way, everybody is equal. Instead of, well, we're gonna look for the equitable solution to this. Let's look for the equal, or, you know, and equality-based solution to it. That's what I'm looking at.
I'm kind of curious to know what's the difference between equity and equal.
Well, I had it at home. Give me a second.
Tracy,
Yes.
thank you. May I make a quick comment? Thank you. While Roger's doing that, Dr. Martin gave us an overview of this program. Well, I'm not sure, maybe it was 4 months ago, but don't quote me on that. And I'm real excited about it. And to be honest with you, if there's anything that should come up with this program that Dr. Martin feels really uncomfortable with, or she thinks, whoa, I got to put on the brakes, or I better talk to the board about this first, I have every confidence to believe that she will do that. I don't really feel any problems with this program because of that. So I appreciate, Roger, you bringing that up, and I hope later that you feel more comfortable with this and who's actually driving the program. So I'm still thumbs up. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's just, maybe it's a little bit vague. I know we keep saying programs because it's got a title and it's got research behind it, but really what this is they're calling for school districts across the nation to become demonstration sites, which means that a school district that becomes a demonstration site is a school district who exemplifies many, not all 11 components of these pieces, but exemplifies some of them to be basically model schools in the nation. And so we have been the very first district to be accepted. We have to confirm that acceptance by providing the funds necessary for them to give us support in reaching our goals. They don't give us goals. There are goals, and actually what Learning 2025 did with the National Commission was they looked at educational systems that identify or exemplify student-centered schools, equity-focused practices, with the equity focus being on students with disability, as well as students of poverty, students of different ethnic and ethnic backgrounds, and also schools that have a commitment to that whole learner and that no student would be marginalized because of their race based on all the things that are in federal laws, and schools that have a future-driven outlook to it. And so basically in my initial meeting with the folks who are leading this initiative, they look at Keystone Central as having a lot of these things in place. And as we finalize some of these, that we would be a demonstration site, a lighthouse district, if you will, for other schools in the nation who are rural and have a high rate of poverty. So basically, we're looking at being a model school based on criteria set forth through research. And so everything that we do, we're actually in control of that. They don't tell us what to do. They say, these are best practices. Where are you at in that continuum? And they've acknowledged that every school district has their own unique footprint and their own unique DNA, if you will, about what's important in that district. And the two main items with the equity that I've spoken to them about specifically that we need to focus on is the poverty as marginalization. And I know this board's been supporting a lot of ideas that remove barriers for students who live in poverty. And also the other thing that we've been focusing on is getting those students access to education and healthcare. It's in our comp plan. We also want to work on students with disabilities. It's not specifically spelled out in our comp plan, but academic achievement is for students who are below grade level. We want them to progress more than a grade level a year, to grow more than a year's worth of growth in 1 year. So there isn't anything in this initiative that would force us to veer from our comprehensive plan, which is what we're still following. If anything, it actually affirms our comp plan as being very valid.
Dr. Mark, question. We're working towards those goals already. If we haven't already met them, why do we need to join a group and pay them money if we're already doing that? Like, I guess I'm a little confused, like,
Yeah.
and what expertise does this group have to bring to us? I guess I'm curious,
I
like,
think that's a
like
great
I don't want to
question.
see a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation kind of thing where
Yeah.
it's so far out to the left and right. I mean, they're just all over the place. It messed everybody up when they started taking that money. And I guess I'm curious. I don't understand what the need of this is for us. I mean, if it's a feather in our cap because we're doing it,
Do we really need the federal?
do we need, I'm saying, I mean, I think the feather in the cap is our kids are learning and we're doing the right thing without anybody. You guys were, the teachers and everybody in administration has been doing the right thing for the last few years without somebody telling us to do it. You know what I mean? Like you come in and said, hey, we want to make sure we're doing this, we're doing that. But you did that on your own. You didn't need some group to tell you that. And I guess I'm just a little curious how does it really truly benefit us
Right.
or our kids? If it makes us look good for the rest of the nation, I hate to say this, I don't care.
Right.
I care more about how we're affecting our kids in our local area. I don't know, I'm just a little
Yeah,
confused.
so
I'm
I
just a little
think,
confused.
yes, the positive press isn't a bad thing, but it's not just about that. What this provides us is an executive coach who has been a leader of change in these areas, an expert, if you will, to come and meet with us. It gives us discount on products and training for teachers moving forward. It also connects us in a network with other school districts who are, maybe there's another school who's a rural poverty school who's doing one of those components better than us, and we have access to them to learn from them. I have a couple pages worth of what this gets us, which probably would be a good thing to share with the board.
I mean,
just
14,000
received
is
that.
not a lot, and it's not even about the
No.
money so much, it's just, I'm just trying to figure out where.
No, I think
Because like
it's a
tonight
valid
earlier,
question.
you guys, I mean, heck, we had a great agreement with Jersey Shore. When was the last time Keystone Central joined up with any district to do anything? I mean, and that wasn't done by any group telling us, it was collaboration between you and Jersey Shore and CTC program on our own accord.
Right, right.
I mean, I'm just a little confused.
Yeah, so it provides that network of support. It provides us access to resources. It provides us an executive coach who is also an expert in some of those areas that we mentioned across the gamut. And I have an intake meeting, if you will, to sit down with one of their experts to go through where do you think we are, where do we think we are? We think we're probably excelling in the career aspirations piece, where that's probably going to be more we're good at, because you see the things with the CTC that are happening, and also K-12 with our career stuff. But how do we continue to evolve as a future focused school district with those things? I think it helps keep us cutting edge and gets us access to those experts and those resources.
Could they come and give presentation to the board?
They can.
I mean, they could probably answer questions that you can because.
They can, but even with the, so one of the things, one of the reasons we got involved with this is because I was in a training with PASA, which was the Superintendent's Association of Pennsylvania. And Bill Daggett was one of the speakers. Bill Daggett's a world-renowned leader in education. He's the rigor, relevance, relationships author and expert. And so he, as he was speaking and he was talking about future focus of education, preparing kids for their future, not our past, I'm going, this guy, everything he's saying is completely aligned with our comp plan. I'm going to reach out to him and see if he'll do our opening for our opening day for teachers to help, support and promote the comp plan, which we do every day on every opening day. So in reaching out to him and talking with him, he said, you would be like a perfect demonstration district because of the things that you're working towards and moving towards. And this is coming out next week, the paper's being released. I said, I'm really interested. When he released it, I'm like, this is affirming all the things that we're doing and where we're headed to, but I don't think we're perfect in all of those pieces. And even though I have a lot of experience and background in those pieces, I'm not an expert in every one of them. And so do I think calling on the experts or some help and support is wise? I do. I think it gets us a little further. It's a collaboration where you can learn from other people. And so from there, they partnered with PASA and PSBA and Mark Duraco at PASA, Connie Kindler. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with them. Also, we're looking at this. I know Cumberland Valley School District was looking at it being a demonstration site. They're one of the top performing schools in the state. Hollidaysburg was looking, I'm not sure if they actually decided to join. I haven't heard of who else is in yet, but I've dissected the papers. I've talked with them about some of the things that our district would not be interested in. I've also shared with those leaders the concerns of some board members brought forward prior to this evening. We've already talked through those pieces. And so I just want to make sure that you understand it's not a program. It's nothing we're forced to do. What they're saying is if we're going to give you a coach and we're going to provide you all this network, we expect you to be committed in return to be collaborative with other districts who need your help too. And present at conferences and share the things that you're doing so that nationwide people can learn from the people who are doing it the best. So it's kind of like a nationwide collaboration, if you will. And that's more what the focus is, but the cost is indicative of some of those resources. And I do have, it's a multi-page paper that tells us what we're getting for that. And we would be using ESSER funding, or was it title? Title.
If I may step in here, put it my way. Even though we are in charge of our own curriculum, it doesn't mean that we know it all. And there's a lot of sources of information out there available, that things that we may not know about that could be a lot more useful to us and better for our students. And so we should be willing to accept any new information or new things. We should be receptive to that.
Well, actually, Wayne, I think it would be good for us to maybe take a look at it, but depending on what it is, we determine whether, as a board, whether it's suitable for our students. So,
But it doesn't hurt for us to at least take a look at it and make that decision.
and to answer your question, Wayne, equity means each individual or group is given the same resources or opportunities. Equity recognizes each person has different circumstances and allocates the exact resource or opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome, okay? So in other words, we're going to show favoritism to one, okay, in order to get someone somewhere, instead of saying, hey, we're offering this to everybody, okay? Instead of offering something to just one person, we're offering it to everybody. The individuals that need it at that point, they're the ones that are going to get it. You know, we're not going to just say, okay, you're getting it and you're getting it. No, we're going to put it out there for everybody. And if they need it, it's there for them. That's the difference.
I think we're having a misunderstanding about what this is all about.
Well,
I don't think it's not a program. It's not a canned thing that we're going to be putting in and somebody's going to say, you guys have to do this. I think what it is, what Dr. Martin is trying to explain is it's an opportunity for us to have people come in and enhance what we're doing. Give us, I mean, Bill Daggett is nationally known, along with the other people that he works with. They're going to come in and try to, it's not something that's going to go into our curriculum per se. They'll help us work to make what we're doing with that curriculum better. It's going to help us to train people maybe in some ways that'll make our teachers better. They're going to be doing some things along those lines. That's what that money's going to bring us. They're not going to say, you've got to teach this or you've got to teach that. It does. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think it has anything to do with that. From the way I'm hearing it explained, and I think it's a great opportunity for our district to get some really high-powered people in here to help us do what we're doing now, but do it better.
okay, so national program is not a federal program.
Right. I mean,
Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. What these guys are heavy hitter guys as far as education goes. They know what works and what doesn't. And they're going to come in here and try to work with us to make what we're doing even better and focus on, you know, how we can do better, more things for kids that are in poverty or need help, and just to do what we're doing better, and along with our comprehensive plan. That's why they were interested, because what we're doing right now, they think, oh yeah, we can come in and we can give you provide some products and some people that'll help us. It doesn't have anything to do with critical race theory or any of that stuff. It's just this group, and I'm, you know, and maybe I'm misspeaking here, but that's the way I see it.
Conversation I had with the other superintendents that were looking at the same time I was. Some of their questions were, wow, we should change our comp plan to align with this. And we're kind of further ahead because our comp plan is not in conflict with what the vision of the future of schools should be.
I had me calm, but now you just totally changed my view. I don't know how you did that, but, well, I don't like the idea that we would have to change our comp plan to fit their view.
We
This is
don't,
our
because
view.
ours is already done.
I know, but I
We're
don't think any
further ahead.
school district should have to change their comp plan to fit this particular group's view.
Well,
It
I
should be
guess-
that local board, local superintendents.
I think maybe the misunderstanding there is that not all school districts have a good comp plan. They're not in the same place.
Again, it's not, you know, it's not I think you're thinking that they're coming here with some kind of philosophy or something.
I do worry about that, John.
And
I'll be very honest.
but
I
that's-
do worry that there's a little philosophy behind their group, but
it's
not good or bad, but you know, what I mean, I worry that there's a philosophy that may
I
differ
think
from ours a little bit, or
what they're gonna come in and share with us is educational best practices. Okay, it's like, it kind of reminds me of effective schools from time years ago. And I mean, at least that's what it sounds like to me. They're gonna come in and try to share with us what works from research.
And in addition to that, instead of fixing schools to what they used to be like,
Right.
thinking about the way the future is and the technology and how it's been different in our world and how fast it's been growing and changing, we can't keep teaching our students the way we were taught. That's just not how schools should be working. We're not preparing them for the future if we're doing what we always did.
no, move past the abacus, move at least calculator, then go to computer and keep.
And the idea is that students would become more of a part of their own educational journey, more voice and choice for kids. Well, what does that look like? We decide what that looks like. They say kids should have more choice and be part of their own educational journey. We decide how. So and maybe it's vague because we haven't, it's not.
Well, we've not experienced it.
That's just
We're in for the
everything that
redesign.
whenever I looked at that, okay, and whenever I listened to it, it's all, you know, hypotheticals or stuff like that. I don't know anything about this.
But it's a process by which we redesign our system. Part of what you saw tonight was a redesign of our instructional system. From the MTS model,
Your equity Haggerty, right? That would be considered a redesign because you added that to
that's
what
a
we did, right?
piece of the core instruction in
Okay.
tier one, but as they explained, for kids who aren't getting tier one, now we have a way to help kids who are in tier two and tier three, which, forgive me, but that helps. Not all students come to kindergarten with the same experiences prior to. And so now some kids need more time to learn to read. Some kids come to kindergarten able to read.
Right, so
Not at
whenever
their
they
own
come,
fault.
and whenever they come, okay, they're all kindergartners. So that's a group, and then we're gonna start giving them the information and stuff.
But they don't
They
all
need.
need the same thing at the same time. So we have to be able to differentiate.
And that's where the teachers come in.
But that's where the equity also comes in, because not all kids can read at the same rate. And so equity isn't just about,
The equality is giving everybody the same access. And then
equity
if they-
is
the problem,
helping.
the problem that I'm seeing is the whole way through his presentation was equity, equity, equity. And
but it's,
I see equity as being favoritism to a certain individual.
yeah, and I guess that's not my definition of equity. And when I look at it from an instructional sense, Some kids need more time than other students, and we look at, that's why we have IEPs. Not everybody, a one size fits all approach to instruction doesn't work. And so we do need to use our tiered system of support. So maybe another school, and we're getting there. We have a tiered system that we have are defining. Do our teachers, our students, and our parents all know about it yet? No. So we're not really lighthouse status yet. So the goal would be by 2025, which is the end of our comp plan, that we would be meeting those goals, and we would have that like a well-oiled machine. That's one example, but we're in control of that. They don't tell us what we need to do, but if we say, hey, how can we get better? We don't have a system in place. They could say, have you thought about MTSS? There's a lot of good research behind it. Here's how, let me direct you to the resources you need to get there. But we can say, no, we don't want to do that. We want to do this. Okay, we'll help you get there. So they have no control over forcing us to do anything. You have my word. They really don't.
Madam President,
Yes, Wayne,
this horse, I think, is dead.
I think so too, Wayne. I agree.
Let's move on.
The more we beat it, it's not going to move. Let's go on.
All right. So the next agreement is for on-hand schools. What is that?
That's our data warehouse. The district has had that for, Justin, how long have we had that?
We've had this for, geez, back probably since 2007, 2008.
It's a data warehouse. It's also our curriculum warehouse, where when we write that curriculum, this is where it's stored and accessed by staff.
Okay, great. And the next is the MHFA Learning Management System. And that's paid for by title grants, $718.50.
Megan, I don't know that one.
That's Christina, that's the mental
Oh,
health.
the mental health, okay.
And then we have our copier lease. And bids for food service, nurse supply, art, music. Any questions on the bids? And we have service proposals for municipal waste. And AV supply bid, office and classroom supplies, custodial, printing, paper bid through the IU consortium. The enterprise agreement, that's for our vehicle leases.
Susan, are all those bids pretty similar to what they've been in the past? I mean, I'm assuming that.
Yes. Anything that came back due to COVID, some of the stuff came back, 2 or 3 times the price that it is current year. So we took some time and looked at those individual pieces and pre-bought everything that we could to restock the warehouse, and then didn't order it on the bid list. Hoping that in the next 12 months, things will come back down.
Which, yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be lucky to find half the stuff.
Next is our workers' comp insurance.
And that also came in, I believe, $20,000 less than current year.
Nice.
Well, that's a first, isn't it?
Yeah. Next one's agreement with the industrial appraisal company for the asset inventory for the audit. Next is for Ehrlich. And Keystone Security. Is that for finishing up the alarm systems? And
That's the one we already have, the annual fee.
okay. And Fry's Fire Protection for inspections for the extinguishers and suppression system every year. Johnson Controls for the fire alarm systems. And then there's also a settlement. Any other questions for business? We'll go to personnel. There's various approvals for our summer programs. Let's go. Transfers. Any questions on personnel? Moving on to athletics. There's a lot of personnel, volunteers, hiring coaches. And under J2, there was an anonymous donor who wanted to donate some equipment to the weight room that can be used, but used in general. Yeah. And different athletic teams.
All the teams, right?
All the teams and also in some.
Maybe with the exception of the football, the two-man sled, it's probably not going to be used by the other teams.
Why not? It's got a little upper muscle.
Soccer team might be able to use it.
Yeah.
And then
Basketball team, it gets rough sometimes.
we have an agreement with Susquehanna Transit for transportation for athletics. And agreement for football, for sportsmen's, for reconditioning some football equipment.
I just was gonna add that the Susquehanna Transit is donating $20,000 towards the athletic transportation as they've done in previous years, but I think that's generous.
Very generous. And then another approve a purchase through Sportsman's for the boys soccer uniforms.
Question,
Yes,
actually, just more of a statement, I guess. How are they, does anybody know what the condition of the uniforms are for all the teams? I mean, is that something we should start taking a harder look at?
they're on a
They're on a
rotating basis.
rotating
Rotating basis,
cycle, yeah.
okay.
Is it 3 or 5 years? Part of the curricular, co-curricular committee has talked about that a little bit. And sometimes 5 years is a little too much,
That's
but
what I was thinking, that maybe 3 might be a better.
we've been taking a look at that to be, and also a higher quality of uniforms so that they are able to last. So, but we found a sweet spot. So not the highest, but also not the lowest quality yet.
So any other general questions or comments from the athletic agenda? So moving on to section K negotiations, there's an MOU to clarify some language for some people on their personal days. Any questions on that? Okay. So that is the end of that. Does anybody from the board have anything else for the?
One quick thing.
Yes.
I'd like to thank all the employees of the district, teachers, administration, maintenance, everybody. You had a heck of a year with everything going on. And everything, I think, turned out really well this year. A lot of pressure, a lot of stress, but I think everybody came through in flying colors. So I'd just like to say congratulations to all of you. That's yours.
Sure, you're all happy to be at the end of the year. I do want to make one announcement, starting next month, one second, Elizabeth. Starting next month, our committee meetings and our voting session and work sessions will be open to the public. Protocols for masks and whatever at that point will be dictated by PDE and all those regulations.
Which PDE is telling us will follow current CDC guidelines. So which is basically if you're vaccinated, you do not have to mask, and you should also continue to follow good hygiene and maintain social distancing when possible.
So it'd be nice to welcome the public into our new boardroom, finally.
The media can actually be here.
Have the meetings here in the district. Elizabeth, what did you have to?
I just unfortunately had a conflict and I couldn't go to the graduation at the Central Mountain High School, but I was there at the Renova one with the other board members and staff, and it was so touching. It was wonderful. The students, one played the guitar, and their comments, their speeches. I hate to use the word canned. Sometimes you go to these graduations, and even though it's a very nice speech, but they're sort of canned, they were so heartfelt. Awesome group of kids. It was a pleasure to be there. So whoever put all that together, who taught those kids, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to kind of echo what she said there, because I was able to attend both of them. And both ceremonies were very, very well done. Kids were very well behaved. I think they, especially both of them were great. They haven't a year other than extreme heat that we had on that day here at Central Mountain. Bucktails was great. The way the field and everything was set up here was really beautiful. I mean, they had everything set. It was just well done in both schools. And I want to thank Mike and Nick and all the people that were involved with this, both ceremonies. Job well done, and I enjoyed both.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Yes, Wayne.
I'd like to say that I'm grateful for the way the administration and all the staff and all the students dealt with this year. Very difficult year. It just makes me proud to be part of the Keystone Central School District. I thank them very much. I'm very grateful.
Thanks, Wayne. Okay. Anything else?
I have a question.
Yes, Polly.
We had got an email that there would be an exchange student added to the agenda, and I didn't see that. Did I miss it, or did something change there?
That information came in very late yesterday, and I asked Mark to pull it off because I have not had a chance to look at it. It came in like the 11th hour, but wanted to be able to have a chance to look at that, and hopefully it will go on for next week. But I wasn't sure if it needed approved in June or if it could wait till July. I haven't even had a chance to read it, Polly. Okay. Do you know if it has, is there a time, is it time sensitive?
I think that they had wanted to have an answer because of planning vacation with the student. So yeah, I mean, as soon as possible would be great.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be an issue with us. I mean, we've always approved foreign exchange students, but I want to make sure that we're checking out the companies that are being used, the agencies that are being used to place students. And the other thing I just haven't had any updates on is what country, I don't even know what country the student's coming from and what kind of COVID restrictions might be in place. I haven't had enough time to even review it to be able to put it on the board agenda, recommend it.
Okay, is there anything that they can do to help you? Like, do you need any more information from them, or?
I think as far as I know, the information came in yesterday afternoon. I have not had an opportunity to even read it.
Okay.
I think I don't even know what I have yet. Mr. Condo has everything assembled, but we haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
Thanks, we'll do our best to get the information out. For next week.
If we can, I will try to get to that tomorrow because I am not here next week. So I will make it a priority to get to that tomorrow. And if I don't see any issues with it or our staff doesn't, then you'll see it on the agenda for next week.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, thanks for checking in on that.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, Roger.
I second it.
So the motion's been made and Randy seconded.
All right, I have a motion for adjournment and a second. And so, board members, we will be having an exec session in 5 minutes. So, thank you, everyone. Have a great summer. Appreciate all your work this year. Thank you.